DMX. Silly. Do you guys like my sweater? All right, so I'm just going to start talking because I'm going to save this live. And thank you for joining me. If you've joined me, I am going to be... Hi, Tamika. Hi, Tangi. Morgan, Africa. Hi, all of you. Please stay, guys. I'm about to do an interview. It's going to look really bad if everyone leaves, you know. Just stay. I'd really appreciate it. And this person's going to ask me anything. I'm sure there are some comments we might read as well. But hi to everyone. Hi, Kabilo. Hi, Annual. Hi, Annuel. Hi, Annuel. Hi, Opless, Sabachelo, Sebastian, Pili, Andronica, Cleo, all of you. Hi, the incredible MVP. Okay. So hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. Make sure your friends are joining. Tag people. Just let's get everyone in here because I'm very excited to do this interview. And I think it's going to be really cool. And I don't want to have only like this many people. I want to share powerful messages with everyone. So I'm going to accept the interviewer now. Requests to join. Unfortunately, I can't just accept everybody or anybody because it's a specific thing I'm trying to do. So I'm looking for the right person to join me. How was everyone's day, guys? Tell me how your day was. Tell me what you've been up to. I can't see him. Oh, there he is. Okay, accept. It's about to start. It's about to start. Stay tuned in. Stay here and tell other people to join us. If you know someone who thinks I'm cool, let them know that it's going down right now. Shout out to you from Kenya. Hi, Charles. How are you?
Hey, Paul. How are you doing?
Excuse me. I'm good. I'm good. I'm in my office. Do you like my fan art?
I do. I'm just a little bit jealous. My wall is
I'm
plain.
sorry. Get some fans. Get some fans who are talented. I've got very talented fans. Shout out to all my people out there. So, yeah.
Wow. So we're just gonna start off with how your month has been. How's November been? How are you looking to end the year, Paul?
Wow, I'm planning to end the year in a very powerful way. I'll decide maybe towards the end of the interview, exactly end of our chat, actually. I like having chats, not specifically interviews. I'm going to decide if I'm going to share something or not, but I'm about to do something that I kind of have done before, but I haven't done on my own. And something I initiated, and like I'm exploring my abilities and talents, and I'm trying to see like what other possibilities are there for me. Like I want to finish 2022 in a very in a way that proves to me that I'm not limiting myself in any way. I'm a very creative person. I'm a very talented person. I'm a strong woman. I don't want to live in regret. My biggest fear is to turn 40 or 50 or even 60 and have regrets about things that I should have done, could have done, or would have done. And I'm excited about this new journey and this new chapter in my life. So let's see. Hi, Tyler. So I want to see exactly where this goes, but I'm taking it very seriously. I think it's very important for an artist to always explore if there's other ways people can be creative, basically.
You said a lot of things that really captured my imagination there. And one of them was how you are a strong woman, how you are looking to end the year very well. And speaking a little bit more about how you're a strong woman, I've read a bit about what you went through in your life, how you used to be at points in your life where you couldn't make ends meet, where you stayed in a cottage, where you had to eat scraps, and now look where you are. So that's testament to how strong a woman you are. You have dealt with loss as well. So I just want you to tell us a little bit about how your experiences have shaped the wonderful woman that you've become today.
Experiences that have shaped the woman I become today. I think before we get to that, like, let's just appreciate everybody who's obsessed with your voice. Everyone is commenting about your voice. Some people are like, it's almost like it's forced. No, he sounds like this on the phone. Your voice is insane. It's amazing. It's beautiful. Shout out to you. All right, cool. So things that have shaped the woman I am today. I think when you talk about loss, I spoke to someone yesterday, and I was talking about like the loss of my parents and how that's affected me. But then at the same time, when I think of the life I've brought to this world, and I think of, the children that I will still want to have, whether or not I actually have them biologically myself, I'm thinking of the inspiration and the motivation that my children provide for me. I think that I was saying to a friend of mine now, Tehran, I was like, I just want to make my life count. I want, when people count people who've made a difference, or even if it's just for myself or for my children or for my country, like I just want to make sure that my existence on this planet counted for something or for someone or for some reason. So it's really important to me that I leave an indelible mark on this planet somehow, somewhere. That's really important to me. So I mean, that maybe sounds like a PC answer, but at the same time, the legacy of my parents, like my parents worked really hard and they didn't have even close to what I've managed to achieve now. And unfortunately, they're not here to enjoy my success with me and my growth with me. So what I really want to do is kind of find ways to make sure that their memory and their legacies live on, because they live within me. And I need to kind of make sure that that is apparent and real. And I'm reaching a phase in my life where I'm willing to share certain things, in the near future, in a way that's responsible, like details about my parents' lives that is going to make a difference for other people, and people can be more responsible with their own lives. So there's a lot that really keeps me going, and keeps me grounded. But I think a big part of that is definitely my children, because I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice but to get out of bed, because I need to make sure when you have kids, I don't know about other people, but I just don't give myself a choice, I guess so.
Mm, that is very admirable. Your parents living on through you. And Paul, we actually have similar stories in a way. I lost my parents when I was relatively young, much younger than you lost your parents, but all the same, we've dealt with loss. I lost my mother when I was 12, lost my father the subsequent year when I was
Oh, wow.
13. I went through a really dark patch where I, I was even suicidal, and a lot of things. But those experiences shape the man that I am today. Some of these experiences can make you sink or swim. And when I look at you, you're the classic example of somebody who's been able to thrive from having those experiences, being thrown into the deep end, and you found your way, you swim. So, knowing all of that, I wanted to ask you if there have been days when you thought, well, I might not be able to make it. In hindsight, looking at where you are today, have there been periods in your life where you've thought this is just getting too much? Everything is happening left, right, and center.
Mm. Definitely, I've had those days. I've had those days in the peak of my career, the recent peak. I don't think I've reached my peak, but one of the peaks that I've actually had is when I was living in New York. I've briefly spoken about this, but it was the first time I was alone in a city that I knew next to no one. I experienced snow, and I experienced, like, I think I thought Joburg was cold, but New York has a different chill. Like
Yeah.
it slaps very different, like that cold, cold. I think it was beautiful though to wake up one day and everything is white. It was like I was in a movie. As an African, snow is a thing you only saw in the movies. So I experienced that for the first time, and it was wild. But there was deep darkness that was stirring within me. I think, like you said, like I didn't really give my I didn't give myself spiritually, psychologically an opportunity to really heal and to understand what went down in my life. I try to go things like therapy, but I think survival is a human trait. But I think
Mm.
survival also was something that, I don't know about other Africans or even with South Africans, but I was taught like survival, like you have to keep going. Like my mom passed away, and I think I might have missed one day of school, but I was at school every day
Wow.
afterwards. Like my father was just like, anybody got time for this? Y'all gonna go to school, because I can't be dealing with arranging a funeral and all your nonsense as well. Like y'all gotta go to school. So that happened, and then my father passed away. But the difference with my father passing away, and that threw me back into that depth of darkness. But my father passing away was also very sudden. And it was that first week of lockdown that we had in South Africa. And the world stopped. And I think that was the difference between my mother passing away, watching the world just carry on, like my whole world hadn't just fallen apart, you know? And then my father passing away, the world had paused, and I got a chance to really kind of be in my pain and be in my anguish and be in my anxiety and confusion and sadness and all those kind of feelings that one would feel in that moment. But in New York, I remember trying to find the skeletons in my closet, and even when I found them, and by skeletons obviously this is a metaphor, you know, and trying to figure out, why am I so out of touch with my feelings, and it's affecting my work. So I feel like a lot of the times in my acting I haven't been able to go as far as I should have, because psychologically, like, I had put up so many walls so that my previous pain wouldn't affect me, that by the time I tried to go back and access it, it was nearly impossible. And it took a long time for me to get to where I am right now, where I can access my emotions, I can go back to certain memories, and I'm able to re-experience them or use them in order to contribute to the character that I'm trying to build. But there were times where, like, Oprah could have been knocking at the door and I was not going to get out of my bed and answer. Like, anyone, Obama himself could be knocking, I'm not getting out of bed. Like, it was, and the only thing, even then, like, I just thought to myself, I lost my mother when I was young, 15 years old, and I know how that affected me. If I take my life, what am I saying to my daughter? I only had one at the time. Well, like, what am I expecting her to now have to deal with? I couldn't figure out a way to even think to myself, oh, if I do take my life, it can't be obvious that I took my life, because I want my daughter to financially be okay with, like, my life insurance and things like that, right? But then it just seemed impossible. I just thought the logistics of it all, when I was in New York, like, how are they gonna get my body back? I was like, this is just gonna be a mess. And I just thought, oh, the person who has to discover me, like the trauma they might have to deal with, like, that's not fair. So I just thought of everything that would surround me, and succumbing to those emotions I was feeling, what that would mean for so many other people. And I realized, okay, my life might have some value, and so I should keep going. And I mean, what a first, imagine thinking about those thoughts and you're in New York, like, what a first world problem. Like, I just thought, no, I'm complaining too
Yeah.
much, let me focus. Yeah,
Wow.
I've had those
Like you
times.
said, you said a lot right there, and I'd like this to unpack. You alluded to how suicide is selfish in a way, because you'd be leaving your children or your daughter right now to fend for herself. You would be leaving your relatives to have to pick up the mess and to have to deal with the emotions of grief, because you'd have called it quits. And I think people like you and stories like these are very important, because there are a lot of people in the world hurting right now who feel things aren't going to change and they think the only way out is to take their lives. So I take suicide as a very serious topic, because I myself am a survivor of two suicide attempts. And I understand just how important it is to have people in your position with your voice who have achieved as much as you've achieved, who have had tough stories, but had the ability as well as the determination to pick themselves up out of that tough situation and become who you are today. Having people like you telling these stories, it's going to give a lot of hope to people who are currently suffering, who are in pain, and they'll realize, I don't have to take my life. If Paul could do it, having dealt with all she did in her life, then I don't have any excuse not to at least fight. So that's why I really wanted to press you on that, because I believe you're a remarkable person. We could talk all day long about all your accolades, but I believe your story is something that really makes you unique, because not many people have gone through what you've gone through and had that kind of attitude, that demeanor. That said, Paul, this makes me really want to ask you what type of a relationship you feel you have with your daughter now, knowing the relationship you had with your parents, and how you're trying to improve on that even more with your own daughter.
That's a great question. I think and congratulations to you for surviving. I have a cousin I was speaking to earlier who just
Thank
bought a home, who also
you.
has survived like suicide attempts, but had the support to finally go to therapy, and he even went to a psychiatric hospital actually, and he's come back so strong. Like now he wants to go out, now he wants to have fun, he just bought a new home. So it's you know, and I just want to say like rest in peace to Ricky Rick, double HP. I think Pro Kid as well also was a suicide. We've had a lot of incredible, like prolific artists here in South Africa that I want to honor every moment I possibly can, because they took their lives suffering. Hey everyone, I see your comments, guys. I just need to focus, but I appreciate everyone who's here right now. And when I think of them, I actually just recently produced and starred in a movie that talks about, or that deals with the issues of suicide and mental and what do you call it, man? Just what do you call it? What do you call it? Give me the word. Like being mentally unstable or mental
That's
issues
it.
that need, yeah. So I think there's a lot of people out there who are dealing with these things every day, and a lot of people have succumbed to those things, but it doesn't mean that they weren't victorious in the lives that they lived, because you can imagine it takes a long time for someone to, it's not natural. Suicide is not natural, so you can't call someone, yeah, depression, yes, but you can't say, you can't assume that someone took the easy way out or was selfish, or you know, suicide is a very unnatural point to reach for anyone, and for
Right.
someone to seriously consider it, and not just that but actually go through with it, means that they were in a very deep and dark place that you can't possibly even fathom. And we should have a lot of empathy and sympathy for people who are in those situations. And when I did that film, I went back into the people that I'd lost. You know, I may not have been Ricky's best friend or his wife or his girlfriend or his family or one of his closest friends, but I definitely was someone who had respect for him, who cared for him, who had a relationship with him, who, you know, who felt a deep sense of loss. In fact, he's still my profile picture, by the way, right now on my Instagram, because I still can't like live with the idea that he's not here with us anymore. It's wild to me. So just to kind of pay homage to those people and show them respect and thank them for what they were able to do while they were choosing to survive or choosing to live. So, you know, RIP and much respect and rest in power to Ricky Rick, to Double HP, Hip Hop Bantula, and to Pro Kid and many others that I, you know, don't have the time to mention right now. But when I look at my daughter, I look at the mistakes that my parents made. I also look at the things that they did correctly. But what's crazy is that, you know, children will hold up a mirror to you. If you have the right access to the resources and the information, children are actually a mirror of yourself. So a lot of the time when I'm trying to correct a lot of my children's behavior, I've adopted one and I have one biological. And so there's a lot of things I don't understand, because I'm halfway in her journey of her life. She's 7, and we met when she was 3.5. So, you know, there's a lot of certain behaviors I don't understand. And it's been interesting navigating my relationship with my adopted child versus my biological, because you're there from the very beginning, you know, from the way it would eat, or choosing that I would breastfeed. Like I was there for every step of her life. But she mirrors me in a very interesting way, and Obushe mirrors me in a very different way. And each time they challenge me, I have to challenge myself and look within myself to say, okay, what can I change that then they can emulate? Because I've realized they do a lot of things similar to me that I don't even realize. And when I'm busy scolding them, someone will say, oh, but you do exactly the same thing, and that's humiliating, you know. And
Yeah.
I really think that a lot of parents out there, when they look at their children, they need to know that that's their a mirror of themselves. Whether it be a pastor who has a child who's lost their way, there's something that you're meant to learn from that experience. So for me, I really, really am proud of the journey I'm having as a parent, with all the challenges I'm experiencing, challenges I never thought I would have to experience, and how understanding my children are. And I think I also take from that maybe I'm also an understanding person to have such understanding and kind children, you know? So there's positives and negatives. And so, you know, I build a relationship where she can respectfully challenge my decisions. The key word is respectfully challenge my
Yeah.
decisions, where she can also understand that sometimes I'm not going to be a perfect parent where I'll do things that will upset her. But then what I've learned is as soon as I realize I took a misstep there or I could have handled this better, I go back and apologize. So we have a really strong relationship, very supportive relationship, understanding relationship, and a relationship full of communication and apologies and improvements and all of that. So I don't want my child to turn 25 and have all this childhood trauma that I never took accountability for, that then she has to deal with later. I don't want that for her. And she's already going to therapy. I'm doing my absolute best to make sure I have a balanced children. I'll say that.
Wow. Well, there's something that you say there that really did catch my attention where you say respectfully challenge. And I couldn't help but think, a number of people, even some of the people on the line right now would be smirking at that, thinking we, or yourself included, Paul, grew up in a very different time where when you have an African parent, the part where you say respectfully, they're like, okay, yeah, let's hear what you have to say next. Then you say challenge, then they're like, what?
Mm,
Challenge
right,
you?
right,
But
exactly.
I'm glad that there is this evolution where we're still maintaining the culture that we had from our predecessors, but at the same time, also acknowledging where we can improve on what they did. Because there are a lot of people who became somewhat robotic just because their parents would always tell them what to do. They can't think for themselves. They never reach their full potential. And some people even end up being depressed because of those situations. And they've never been taught to be empowered. So if you cannot at least challenge a decision or ask why this is being done this way, you can't really learn. And I'm happy that you do that with your children. Even more so, I'm compelled to ask you, what made you get to the stage where you're like, I would allow them to respectfully challenge me?
I think because I want them to enter an environment and a human ecosystem that they are able to challenge. And I think a lot of what children do, like you've seen those, I'm sure you've seen those videos where like lion cubs are challenging their own parents, like you'll see a big lion or a lioness and the cub is pulling their ear and they pretend to get hurt to give them the confidence to be able to speak up. So you can't expect, we have big issues with gender-based violence in South Africa, and I'm sure the rest of the continent on this planet altogether, whether it's financial abuse, whether it's physical abuse, whether it's psychological abuse, and if you raise children who cannot speak up or talk to you comfortably and openly, then what are you teaching those children about speaking up in other environments? Because they need to practice on you. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's how I justify it. So, there's a line I will always draw, but I give them lots of room to play. I Google information on, okay, like Ogusha's had certain developing issues recently that I realized, okay, we have to change certain things in the house so that she stops these type of behaviors. So I've done things like with Ogushe, even if I hate what she's wearing, she gets to wear it. She gets to choose to, because she's had a lot of changes in her life. She hasn't felt very much in control of her life. So therefore, there's been other behavioral issues that have come up that one would just say, this child just likes to do whatever. So I've gone out there and I've gotten her into therapy as well. But I've found information on how to distract this behavior and foster something else. So it seems like she loves to create clothes and she likes creating things. So now it's like, okay, she gets to do her hair on certain times. So when we give her hair a break from the braids, we've said to her she can do whatever hairstyle she wants. She can do it herself. Here are the things that she also wants to use, because otherwise she ends up taking those things without permission because she wants to do it anyway. So we create the environment where she can explore her capabilities and her talents in a controlled environment, in a safe environment, where she can wear whatever she wants. She'll take a dress and fold it and tuck it and do incredible things. And she'll say, Mommy, look at my creation. So I don't want to say to her, you don't dress like that. You shouldn't be dressed like that. You know what I mean? All that stuff. Like, we need to let children explore who they are, who they could become when they're young. My father actually allowed me to do that a lot. In fact, he would even argue with my mother. My mother obviously would want me washing dishes and cooking and cleaning. I like to be outside. I like to take care of livestock. I loved gardening. I loved being outside. So my father would often challenge my mother and say, but did she not also do this and this and this? So then we negotiated that, okay, if I want to go outside first thing in the morning, I want to be with my dogs. Then, okay, make sure you fed the dogs, make sure you fed the chickens, make sure, excuse me, Excuse me.
Bless you.
Make sure that, thank you. Make sure that you've made the porridge for everyone since you're up first. At least the porridge is ready for everyone else. But so those are the type of setups and adjustments I've made so that there can be respect. But the respect goes two ways. I can't expect my children to respect me if I don't respect them. You know what I mean?
Wow. You said a lot of things where
I usually
a
say
lot
a
of
lot
them
of things.
resonated with me. You said a lot of things that resonated with me, but a lot of them were also eye-opening. I never thought of them that way,
I
and I
forgot
think a lot of
something
the people,
actually. I'm reading a
yeah.
book called, I think it's called The Laws of Human Nature or The Key or Laws.
Ah,
It's written by Robert Greene. I think he wrote The 50 Laws of Power. I've read not even a chapter of this book, but I've underlined so much. I'm processing so much, and I'm already activating a lot of what I've learned. I'm watching a lot of TED Talks because after I think the COVID fatigue, I'm finally getting over my COVID fatigue. And now I'm like locking my mind back in again into my vision, my goal, not just the idea of surviving the repercussions of COVID and COVID itself. Not that I ever had COVID, but you know, COVID affected us in lots of different ways as people. So I think that this book, I suggest everyone go and read it if they want to understand who they are. But if you repress your natural human nature, who you really are at the core is a human, right? The thing is now we have to take what we feel and then go to our frontal cortex and say, okay, I think it's called that, and say, okay, let me translate this into some complex language, all these complex languages that we have to speak, and complex ways in which we have to behave around other people in order to be perceived or understood, or, you know, create illusions of who we want people to think we are. That creates a repression of your true human nature, which ends up then causing depression and causing other sort of behavioral issues in people. I think it's called The Laws of Human Nature. But if you Google Robert Greene, you'll find it. Just Google Robert Greene and human nature. It should come up. But this book is like effectively changing my life and how I activate my children, how I look at people, and how I communicate with people. So I really suggest that. And you don't want to repress your children or your own human nature in unhealthy ways, because you will end up having like mental issues in the future or psychological issues in the future because of it.
mm. After all of that, I think they should be calling you Dr. Paul Tusi or Professor
The
Paul.
law of
Well,
human nature, Sana Ranai has put it up there. Cool.
hey, but I love that. You just double down on what we were saying earlier, where people shouldn't be repressing their feelings or forcing themselves to act against their human nature. And I think that's why a lot of people love you and resonate with you. You're one of the most authentic people, especially in your position, that I've seen ever. You
Oh,
don't mind
thank
being yourself.
you.
You really don't mind being yourself. And I think people truly gravitate towards that. When they see you, they're like, huh, she's not acting like you'd expect maybe somebody who's in this position to typically act. You don't
Mm.
mind being yourself. And I think a lot of people look at that and they genuinely gravitate towards that. So I'm happy that you touched on how people should not repress their own human nature for themselves or for the other people. Just you should be your true self. First discover who you are, but then stay true to who you are at all times. And while we're still on that, you spoke a lot about how your children and your parents are your inspiration and your inspiration for your career, which is what I'd want us to maybe delve into more. With your career, you started out with, well, Zone 14, a ladies, number one ladies detective agency, and several other gigs which did not perhaps seem prominent at the time. Could you walk us through that? How did you stay persistent while you didn't know that you're going to end up here, given what you started with?
Yeah, man, I always knew I was special. I always knew I was different. I always knew I was meant for great things. I live in great frustration when my goals don't come to fruition or I'm not being productive enough. This book also told me about productivity. No, there was a TED talk I watched that I think I tweeted it, that talks about productivity, success, and age and how they're all related to each other. And I challenge myself to be more productive whenever I see, like, I don't have a private jet. Like, you know, remember the dreams we'd share when we were 12 years old? Like, I'm going to have my own airplane and I'm going to have my own this. Like, I'm looking at myself like I was actually quite serious. I don't know about the rest of you, but when I said I want to have this type of house, I want to own an island, I was quite serious. So I think that's one of the other reasons that like I take life so seriously, but I choose not to take myself so seriously. Like what I visualize for myself doesn't have to change who I need to be. However, I'm starting to wonder, and maybe this is something I'm going to put to you to let me, maybe you can give me some advice right now. But I'm starting to wonder if I don't need to get someone and sit down with someone and talk about the idea of authenticity and perception and how I can bring those two together. Because when you rely on being yourself and being authentic, you get extremely misunderstood and misinterpreted because people don't have context of background conversations or experiences that you've had that have led you to become the way you are. So you find a lot of famous people, artists, celebrities, very depressed because they're repressing so much of themselves in interviews and things like that. But I'm starting to wonder if I shouldn't do the same thing because, you know, I'm getting perceived and misunderstood in incredibly hurtful ways. You know, like people hurt me for being who I am, but I can't help but to be who I am. That's all I really know. But I've seen that a lot of other people are able to change their hue, if I can call it that, when they're on camera, because they understand the power of illusion and understand the power of perception and understand that people are not going to truly understand who they are, so they will give people what people want to see in order to achieve the goals that they want to achieve, and they can keep their authenticity for the people who will understand that, which I think is also okay. It's just that for me it's like, oh my god, I already am an actor, so now I have to be someone else even when I'm being myself. Like that's a lot. You know, rather I think that's why a lot of actors and a lot of other artists just hide away, because they just cannot stand the idea of having to live that way. So, I mean, I love being me. I love who I am. I'm proud of who I am. And I hope that one day that can be enough without having to share deep details of my life, which I'm starting to wonder if maybe that can change people's lives and improve people's lives maybe in some way, and also shed more light on who I really am outside of the tweets and the Instagram posts, etc.
Mm. Well, I'm happy to hear that. You've touched on something that I've had a lot of people in my circle. Uh, for those of you who may not know who on the live, I work with a lot of celebrities, predominantly the ones in the States. And several of them have echoed exactly what you're saying, perhaps even in private conversations where they've said it's getting exhausting, you know, having to sometimes have a facade just so people can accept you. They never really get to let their guard down. It's so difficult because everyone has an opinion. And like you say, people can really be hurtful. People forget that they're speaking to a human being behind a specific account. People will drop all sorts of uh, horrible comments or just insensitive things that people do without realizing the impact of it. Because a human being, a breathing human being, is on the receiving end of whatever opinions they may have. And they don't really realize the power of it. They're just like, "Hey, they're a celebrity. They'll be okay." But at the end of the day, that celebrity is a living, breathing human being, no different from the person who's sending all the hate message or hate mail, whatever it may be. So you touching on that, I'm happy that you've actually done so, because it can educate a number of people who might not actually realize the impact of their words on some of their favorite celebrities or some of the celebrities they don't like. But all the same, these are people, and we need to be
Just
careful
because
with
they
how
don't like you doesn't mean you're not their favorite celebrity. I've realized I'm actually certain people's favorite person because you know way too much about me. It's like an atheist who knows the entire Bible so that they
yeah.
can challenge so that they can challenge Christians. I think if I were like, I mean, I'm not Jesus, guys. Don't take my words out of context when you take this interview and throw it on YouTube, because that is going to happen. But like, if I were Jesus in this context, there are people who know more about Jesus than Christians, so that they can
Mhm.
punish Christians
For sure.
with that information, and make them question why they're living that way. Some people live to hate the way that other people live, and they
True.
study it so well. It's just wild. So, I mean, I want to say shout out to my haters. I love you guys. I'm down to have you on my side. Like, as long as you are talking about me, I've realized. Thanks. Shout out to Kim Kardashian. I've realized that I will not bite the hand that feeds me. I won't. Because you guys, when you talk about me, corporates are not checking whether or not, you know, you said something positive or negative. They're just checking, is this person gonna make sure people are talking about us as well while they talk about her? So either way, you know, I've just learned that I need to find ways to cope. I need to find ways to protect myself, but also not compromise me and my life experience, because the time I give away to people in pain or anguish or sadness because of what they said, it's time I'm never gonna get back. I might be lying on deathbed one day thinking, damn, that year I wasted complaining about people saying 1, 2, 3 about me. I could have maximized that time, or I could have alchemized that energy. So that's also something I'm trying to master, alchemizing negative energy into positive energy, because that is possible. So that's kind of where I am in my journey. I don't even know if I've answered your question. I think this conversation is so stimulating. I'm just going at every angle at this point.
You have. You've answered it and more. That's what I'm happy with. Like you're being very generous with your responses because you're giving much more than what I'd have asked, and even making me think of something else that
Maybe
I
it's giving
probably
me
should have.
beautiful voice. It's giving me big brother. Everyone is saying it's giving
But
me big brother.
but you know what you're saying right there makes me see just how methodical you are. You're somebody who realizes that the worst position you can be in is when people are indifferent. So if they like you or if they hate you, that's still attention at the end of the day. It might be hurtful, but then that's still good on the business end. When they're indifferent, when they just like, oh, this person did that, they're like, I don't care. That's
Mm-hmm.
probably the worst position to be in. But all the same, this makes me want to move into the next area, which is your accomplishments. Paul, you've been the first to do so many things. I think of Queen Sono. You were the first with that as well, being the first Netflix produced series within Africa. And then we think of something like Catching Feelings. Again, you were the first there in terms of the first form on like from Africa to be on Netflix. And then on other things like Scorpion King, you've done big things with that as well. And then the Comedy Central thing. You've done a lot of things where I actually start to forget how many big things you've done. And then obviously one of the biggest game changers was you being one of the main characters in Quantico. It's just been all up from that point onwards. Could you just walk me through what makes you always want to be the first? Don't you ever get tired of being the first, Pearl?
I don't know. Babe, I don't know. I think, you know, I'll say this, like a lot of people thought maybe I had failed or I had, well, I don't know. I don't know why people think I came back to South Africa after living in the States.
Oh.
Um, I think people really like to relate that type of journey to failure because maybe in the past someone tried to make it in America, and I was on the biggest show in the States. I wasn't in any sort of problematic situation. I was, however, at the time engaged. So I needed to come to attend to that. I had a child back home that I needed to go back to. Um, and I also needed to recalibrate. Like I said, I had gone through a lot psychologically, you know, and I needed to go back home and really recalibrate on who I am and go and really figure out like what's my way forward. And what I discovered was my career can actually continue while I'm African. One of my, I mean, even look at Tuso, look at so many other artists who have made incredible marks on the continent, well, in the world, who are from this continent. But that doesn't mean you necessarily have to leave where you are from in order for you to be great elsewhere. In fact,
Mm.
I think it's worked out more in my advantage. The fact that there's no question on how African I am to the rest of the world because I am in Africa and I am an African. So that has, I think, helped a lot. So when I came back to South Africa, sorry to go roundabout, it's going to make sense in the end. The idea for me was I wanted to be, and it was interesting because this line was kind of in Queen Sono, and I didn't even write that line in there, was I wanted to be the tip of the spear, like, you know, the spearhead.
Ooh,
I wanted to be the
yeah.
tip of change. I wanted to be the tip of that spear in terms of piercing through the glass ceiling or whatever ceiling
Mm.
is on African talent. Whether so, you'll notice that I don't do local productions. I mean, sometimes I kind of miss it, local South African productions. Sometimes I kind of miss it, but I feel like for me, I know the negotiating power I have. And I don't want to be in a situation where someone doesn't want to pay me my royalties or doesn't want to pay me what they owe me because the industry in South Africa is super exploitative of artists, whether it be in music, whether it be in acting. Even producers get exploited, and then they in turn exploit actors. And they make even other actors who were getting exploited have turned into producers because they've realized, you know, they want to have their lives in their own hands. Excuse me again. They
Bless
want
you once more.
Right. They want to have their destiny in their own hands. So they become producers, but they don't change anything about it. And I think it's been very disappointing to see people make those shifts, but not start something new in terms of making sure artists can take care of themselves. And I think, you know, being greedy and being is like capitalist in a certain way maybe is also human nature and is a way of surviving and is a way of capitalizing your life. If people don't know what they're worth, then they might not even understand it when you show it to them. I don't know what the situation there is. And so for me, or maybe the money isn't there, but actors are not uniting and coming together. So me doing a lot of things like are first is because I've refused to accept the norm. I've never actually thought of it that way. That just hit me. I've refused to accept mediocre. I've refused to accept the norm. So I will always create and force people to understand that there's different ways of doing this without exploiting artists. And that is for me something very important to achieve. So whether it was I did the first Comedy Central. I was the first Black woman. I think I was the first woman on the continent to actually host a Comedy Central roast outside of Netflix, outside of Mac. And for me, the more important than being the first woman or the first Black somebody to do something, the biggest importance for me is to be the first person. I want to make sure people, Black people, but people and Africans in general know that you don't have to follow someone else's path. Sometimes you are going to feel lost in life because you are meant to create your own path. And you need to walk in that path, and usually a path that is not already pre-prepared because other people have walked it. There are going to be thorns in your feet. There's going to be no station where you can fill up or gas. So when you pave a new way, you are going to really suffer. And that's what I've put myself through, but I've really reaped the rewards. But what's scary is every time you find a new path, sometimes it might be on a mountain. And this last year, my path put me through the most, where I think I even put the road less traveled. Thank you, Lihlekazi, is like my children, because I have to carry my children on that path with me. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because I need to teach them to emulate that behavior so that they can also choose their own paths in the future because they saw their mother do it. And they know that, you know, sometimes you're going to suffer. Sometimes you're not going to be able to spend time with your kids or spend time or doing things that you love, or you won't be able to provide certain things because the road less traveled has less people there to even pick you up and keep going with you. What does that mean? You're going to have to pick yourself up, sweet girl. You're going to have to figure it out. And I'm figuring it out as we speak. But I'm never, ever regretful when I get to the destination or when I figure it out myself and I create something new and I find a place no one else has found, because those rewards are so powerful. So a line from my favorite movie is from, I think it's from The Curse of the Black Pearl. And if not The Curse of the Black Pearl, it's At World's End, Pirates of the Caribbean, is to say, of course you are lost. Someone comes and says, oh, Captain, we're lost. It's the pirate. And then the captain says, of course we're lost. How else are you supposed to find a place that cannot be found? And that line is one of my mantras.
Wow. Good pirate impersonation, by the way.
That's
And
terrible.
yeah, like
Thank you.
next you get caught in Pirates of the Caribbean or something.
It's
But
actually my favorite movie franchise. I don't know if I should be embarrassed to say that, but I love Pirates. Like my children actually, Ogutle wants to have a Pirates of the Caribbean party next year, which is like very exciting for me.
same, you know, I was hurt when they parted ways with Johnny Depp, but that's a conversation for another time. But yeah, that's one of my favorite movies as well. And the line that you just spoke about right there, that is such a pertinent thing to speak about. When you're going to a place where most people haven't been or nobody has been, you're not going to have a trail. There's not going to be a clear path to do something that nobody has done. That's why it hasn't been done. And I'm happy that you've highlighted that. Even more so, I see how you have this insatiable desire, but a healthy type of insatiable desire to always achieve. Because I asked you, Paul, do you ever get tired of becoming the first to do this, the first to do this? And you say, well, these are things where I was the first black person or the first African to do this. I want to be the first person, period. The first person, not of
Like,
color or gender or anything. I want to be the first person to do something. I want to be the first person to do this. So I love that mentality. And that is indicative of where you are today. You're somebody who's very determined. I think more determined than most people would ever give you credit for. You're extremely determined. And that is going to make you continue to rise. I see you going more and more on the world stage. Most people are going to be shocked when perhaps we're saying the biggest actress in the world is Pearl Thusi, but I can actually see this happening someday with that type of mentality. But
right.
while we're still on that subject, right, Paul, having gotten all these accolades and seeing what that meant, how much did your life shift? How much did it change? How much did you need to adjust to the new life that you had as a superstar, a bona fide superstar, which you are? And you've always been that, by the way. Like you say, you knew you were going to be big
I
since you were a
always knew
kid.
it. I always knew it.
Up,
And
up
imagine growing
until
up with a parent who only understands corporate work. And my dad was a taxi owner. Like he was an informal public servant, even like, you know. But the thing is, like, imagine, like, thank God for my mother. You see, that's when my mother then came in. Oh, she wants, oh, one of the, my dad put me into, you know, like when you model in the hood, like where there's little miss whatever competitions, right? Where you win like
yeah.
something be like glasses that are actually going to be for the house, or some sort of piece of something that is actually going to decorate your home and be useful for your parents more than really you. You just get the glory of like, oh, I miss whatever your community was. I think I think that for me, you know, my parents and my school, Pinetown Girls High School, being supportive of my modeling career back then and allowing me to explore like worlds outside of the norm also created that tenacity in me to say, oh, I can do something new, and actually it can be, I can introduce new things to my family and to my elders that will allow them to support that thing, because it also helps me provide for the family. So modeling did that for me. Like I bought my own prom dress. Like I bought my own prom dress because my father didn't understand that. My father only did 2 years of schooling in his entire life because there was no one to pay for it because he had lost both his parents. My father couldn't speak English until the day that he died. I mean, he could, you know, they said he'd say, I love you, baby. He could say, I'm coming, you know, things like that. But I'd actually never seen my father hold a conversation with anyone in English, you know? So for me, the tenacity and the drive comes from like that child that I used to be, who had all these big dreams and wanted to do these things. And I even still honor that child in small ways. Like when I grew up, my dogs were in chains. I mean, obviously, I couldn't control much of that because I couldn't build the perimeter walls. Today, I have 5 dogs and an acre that they get to run around as they please on, because that's what, and I still hire someone to walk them so that they can go have a life and a social life outside, because I know that they're like social animals who need to explore. So like it's kind of my way of showing the child that I was. And I don't know, a lot of this might not make any sense to other people out there, but remember the child that you were, because the child that you were dreamed in a limitless way. Go back to those dreams, see if you can change, you know, if maybe edit a few things about that dream, or there were little things you loved doing when you were a child that you could make a business out of today. You know, I still go back to the kid that I was and say, oh, you know, I always wanted to ride a horse when I was a kid. So I still have a dream of owning like horse stables and having my children being able to just ride horses. So I just think that honor excuse me, honor that child in every facet you possibly can, so that you can be the adult that the child you wanted to be. I think for me that's the ultimate dream, to be very honest. So but I mean, some of the dreams I dreamt as a child, zone 14 was it. That was the end of the capacity. I thought, because as a child you thought that, oh no, once I'm doing zone 14 or isidingo, I'm there, I'm on it, like I'm famous, like I've done it. But when you get there,
or
so that's where
generation.
my depression also came in. I thought when I start doing isidingo, zone 14, all the work that I'd done leading up to Quantico, it felt nothing like what I thought it would feel like. And that had me tumbling down. And I also had to learn then how to manage my expectations from my achievements and only do them to make me happy and not see how the world reacts. But to answer your question and to close this part of the conversation off is to say, like, schools need to change on this continent. My children are supposed to be learning about taxes. That has held me back. If I had understood how taxes work, how to balance my budget, or balance a sheet, or balance your bank statement, whatever, I think that so many Black people would be so much further in their lives. So for me, there's a lot that our schools are teaching our children that was being taught to children who were meant to be working in factories at some point. That's how school was developed. Firstly, so parents can go and work and leave their children somewhere, and so that children can be prepared for either prison or work where there's a bell and they operate and they understand how to operate like that. So even the school I've chosen for my daughter, my older daughter now moving forward, because I want them to have the French language. So I'm just making sure my children have all the options possible. And I now need to get into financial education with them so that I don't figure out, once I've made all this money, that actually almost half of it doesn't belong to me, especially when you're in America, or I need to budget for this, or I need to plan for this, or get a life policy. There were so many things that are actually less about the work itself, but more about productivity in my personal life to make sure that I have less admin to deal with. So I just want to encourage everybody out there to make sure their kids have financial literacy. Financial literacy is where the problem is, where the danger is in South Africa.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm happy. This has been a common theme with all the questions. You're giving us so much more than what have been asked for, and I love that. I really do. And I have to say this, Paul. You're one of the most wise people that I've ever interviewed. You're one of the wisest people that I've interviewed, and I've interviewed a number of wise people. I think another person who comes to mind who I think was extremely wise is Matthew Knowles, Beyonce's father. And the wisdom that he has is also partly because of his age now. He's up there in years and he's seen more of the world. But for you to be in your early 30s and to have this type of wisdom, that's something else. Have you ever heard of the term somebody has an old soul? Like
Yes, I've heard
you
that.
know, exactly. You are somebody who is very, very wise, very intuitive and discerning. And I love that about you. Again,
Thank you.
adding that to your authenticity, I can understand why a lot of people gravitate towards you. And I hope more people realize this about you. But another character trait that we had not yet gotten into is how resilient you are. You were speaking about zone 14. You got rejected, what, 4 times? You applied 5 in total. Tell us about that, having to deal with failure and still pushing yourself in spite of failure.
Yeah, look, I often have to teach this to my kids as well. At the moment, specifically and especially Oguhle, I think Tando has gotten a grasp of this type of nature, or this, how do I say, character trait. Difficult times, all they do are there to not just reveal, but build your character to you and for you, you know? I think Unati said this once when I asked her about a specific time in her life. She said, you know, that time, she didn't say it was challenging. She didn't say it was difficult. She said it was character building. I said, wow, what a thing. I'm holding on to that. So whenever I'm in a difficult time, I look in the mirror and I think of the character traits I have proclaimed I've proclaimed to the world, I am this, I am that. And a lot of people, when it's time to be that, it gets difficult and a lot of people will fall. And that's where you truly learn who you really are. And for me, I've got, like, these last 3 years, oh my God, it's been character building. And I've had to decide, okay, I mean, if I'm going to be real, I'm going to be real, I guess. There's a lot of women out there who, you know, and I'm not saying I'm judging this or I have a problem with it or I think those women shouldn't be doing that, each to their own. But I've always been like, I do it on my own. I'm independent. There was a moment where I seriously was like, maybe this blessed thing ain't such a bad idea. I'm like, I'm suffering and I don't want to take my kids through this. But I couldn't do it. I was like, nah, I'm not built for this. Like, I'm going to have to suffer because this is the life I've chosen and this is who I've decided I am. So you stick to that and you get to learn, because even an exam, there's a time limit. To every challenge, to every point in your life, at every difficult time in your life, there is a limit. God can't be that cruel. It's not possible. So every exam, every test in your life has a time limit. So you have got to understand that you've just got to survive. Sometimes it's going to be 2 weeks, sometimes it's going to be 2 years. And you need to learn to understand and be consistent with who your character is and be disciplined in who your character is. And it'll come across then in other ways. And sometimes you don't want to burn out. Sometimes you need to stop, pause, and be in that place and remember that place so that either you don't find yourself back in that place again, or you can tell that story to someone one day who finds himself in that place and lead them out of there. So I think in terms of my resilience, for me, if somebody says no, that's still a good answer. It means God has not decided that this is my moment. But any opportunity to make my dreams come true, you can say no to me 10 times. I'm coming back to try again and try again and try again. Because as long as I'm still in the game, I'm going to play. That's that.
Wow. Paul, I like that. There's a stubbornness to that, and I love that. Where you're like, I'm not.
Yo,
I'm
man,
not
I
gonna
went back there. The first time, though, someone else got it. Second time, someone else got it, obviously. Excuse me. By the time they chose me, the girl they had chosen by the third time, she pulled out. They were not willing to write a new character for the previous person. I'll just tell you who it was. Terry Peto left Zone 14. That spot opened. Although there had been, I think, another different audition I'd done, but that spot opened. I auditioned twice. I didn't even have a car. I had to get a friend to leave church, come pick me up, go to that audition, then go to my house to drop me off, and then actually, they would come to me and pick me up. I dropped them off back at church where they were working. Shout out to Jonathan. And we were using someone else's car, Gift's car. Like, you see, you also need like to create a proper structure in your life of good, supportive people. So I would go back to the church, drop him off, go to the audition, pick the person up at church, drop myself off at my house, and that person would go back to church. And you've got to pay those type of things forward as well. But to finish, this off, it was to say, by the time Tuli, I think her name was Tuli, who had gotten the role, they rewrote the role, they canceled that role altogether, got a new character. Imagine this, God is powerful. For my resilience, I got to name my character after my mother. So that's the little ways I try. Even catching feelings, that character is named after my mother. It's the same name. But I'm just gonna put my parents in whenever I possibly can, because I want them, if they can still see what's happening, I want them to feel seen or feel like I still live to make them proud as well. So I got to name the character. They didn't even audition me. They just put me in there because they knew I was coming back anyway. So that's how life works. If you keep coming, they're gonna have to open the door. I mean, have you not noticed when someone knocks and doesn't stop, you do go at some point and open and check, like, okay, what do you want? I want to get in. They'll let you in.
Great analogy. Great analogy. That is true. That is true. And I love this perspective that you have on life and how important it is to continue to be determined, to be resilient. You're going to be told no a lot of times. People don't just get to where they are. I know a lot of people will see the celebratory moments when you're winning things, when you're having new houses, new cars, and they'll be like, this person must have always been like this. No, people have had to go through some real tough stuff to be able to get to where they
I
are.
have a
People
quote
like
for you
Paul.
that
Yeah.
I just made up. Failure is littered all over the path to success. It's on your path
Yeah.
to success. There's failure all over the place, and it's to
Everywhere,
teach you.
yeah.
Sometimes failure is like weeds, ne, on that path you're creating, and maybe God has pre-planned this path for you, right? I will come up with anything to make it make sense. One thing about me is like there'll be weeds that are maybe meant to keep you on a certain path that has no one has walked before, because God put this, ancestors, God, universe, whatever it is you want to believe in. Failure is littered all the way through to the path to success. You just have to keep going and accept the failure, whether it be the thorn, like I said earlier, that gets to your feet, whether it's like you fall and a rock scabs your knee. If you can walk, walk. carry on walking. Mm.
Wow. And, thank you to everybody who's been part of this live. I only intended to keep Paul for an hour or so. So we're going to be getting close to closing it out, but we're still going to have questions from all of you. So just make sure one or two or three of you are going to be able to sneak in some questions that Paul will answer. The questions that she wants to answer, of course. And I wanted to highlight how, Paul, throughout this whole interview, like I've said, you've been authentic, you've been wise, you've been giving gems. Like I feel like I should
Pearls of
pay for a
wisdom.
seminar right now. Exactly. You've not been dropping gems, you've been dropping pearls. But
Thank you.
you've really taught a lot of us. I'm learning, and it's not often that I find myself just sitting back and at a loss for words when I'm hearing somebody speak. But like I said, you have wisdom beyond your age, and that is something that is remarkable. Something that I don't think many people would possibly give you the credit for, because maybe, like you say, sometimes you're not always getting the chance to do interviews like these. Perhaps you're always busy doing another thing. So people just get to know the character, the person you're playing on TV, but they never really get to know who you are deep down, like just all this wisdom that you have within you that's just eager to be pushed out. So I'm happy that we've been able to unearth some of this, and more people know just how amazing you are, not just for the acting prowess or for the looks or for the achievements, but just who you are as a person. So I love that about you. And I'm probably going to end this off on my side before we go into the questions from the people in the live. When it comes to a top five that I have when it's like actresses in Africa, you're on that list, and I'll say perhaps the other people who are on that list. I'll think of Shalice, Dana Guerrera, Tandy Newton. I'm trying to think of who else I'll throw in there. But what I
Tuso.
like about those people,
Tuso
true,
Mbedu.
exactly,
Throw Tuso Mbedu in there, please, because she's
definitely.
doing the damn. To be, she's inspired me so much. Like this COVID thing, there was a point where I was
Hmm.
like, maybe I should just get a normal job like everybody else. Like I don't know, because my work visa expired during the time we were red zone, so I couldn't even find a way to I'm thinking in Zulu. Ngifuna ukuthi uyivuselela. Wow, to get it renewed. Wow, I just think that was wild. And an opportunity has finally come through, a great opportunity that I'm going to go and do back in the States, because thank God I came back home again. Like sometimes you need to be where you belong to get to the place where you need to get to. But I want to just give a shout out to Tuso for the inspiration that she's given me in the last couple of like years, and how she's pushed the boundaries, how her talent has shined through, especially as a dark brown girl. Like she's really pushed the boundaries and even showed me a thing or two, and I'm so incredibly inspired and impressed and moved. Like I feel so inspired by her, and I'm so incredibly proud of her. Like watching every move, like I'm part of her army. If people come for her, like I'm ready to go for them, like type of situation. So it's really, really like good to see other people where when I'm feeling weak, I can see other people who are doing strong and incredible things.
Mm.
Nomzana Mbata is another one. Terry Peto will always be a huge inspiration. She was like a big sister to me. With whatever she might be dealing with, like that person was good to me, and she deserves her flowers as well. So yeah. I don't know if I've answered your question. I don't know. I went on a tangent there about Tuso, and I've lost my way.
No,
You were
you
talking
did.
about actresses, top five actresses that you've seen on the
I,
continent. Yes, please carry on.
Yeah, so I was saying this goes back to what you touched on about wanting to be the tip of the spear. You've managed to be that, and the other actresses that I mentioned, they're people who've done the same thing, where they've also helped Africa get on the global landscape where we belong, I believe, as a continent. And we just have to appreciate people like you more often, because it's not easy to break into those mainstream markets. It's very difficult. And while I'm still on this subject, is something that I definitely have to say, because I've seen a few people, you've also seen a few people speak about this whole colorism thing, and I think it's stupid, because I understand the American market very well. And I'll say this to people: Pearl would have never gotten to where she is without the hard work, without the talent that she has. it's not just down to looks. Believe me, there are very, very beautiful people in this world who never get anywhere near the type of roles that she's gotten. So anybody who's ever tried to discredit what you've done, I think they're simply misinformed, or they're just trying to get a rise out of you. They're just trying to get a reaction out of you. But the truth of the matter is, everything you've achieved, especially on this global landscape, it's down to all the work that you've put in. It's down to the talent that you've always had. It's down to all those intangibles. Very little has to do with looks and all of that, which most people try and say, oh, light skin this, light skin this. And I'll be like, if only people knew. But I just wanted to give you your flowers for, first of all, enduring such stupidity, because I've seen some people who say these things. So enduring such stupidity and then taking it gracefully like the queen you are. You're not always going to respond to trolls or say, oh, you're wrong about this. You're calm, you're composed, even when people say those disheartening things. And I want to give you your flowers for that, Paul. Just the way that you've been able to deal with some of those things. But, you know, highlighting all of this, and all this comes back full circle to you're on a mission. Adversity is something that's going to come your way. Like I said, I believe you have everything that it takes to be the best actress alive. And I think you're well on your journey to getting there. While you're going there, you're going to have a lot of people who try to discredit you. Let them do so, because that is part and parcel of the journey. You can't, heavy is the head that wears the crown. You've had that before? Heavy is the head
Man,
that wears
my
the
neck
crown.
is constantly sore. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm not even trying to be funny. Like, my neck stays sore. Like, I must be dealing with a lot. Like, you know, what's the word? Like, metaphorically, you know. Thank you so much. That means so much to me. You know, I've dealt with that type of chat my entire life. And I thought people, I don't know why people think it was a new chat, because I've always looked like this. So therefore, people have always commented on it. And I think when I was younger, I was very apologetic about it. And as much as I want to take the part of the compliment of me being graceful, I reached a point where I saw one of these comments one day, and I thought people would support me. Like, I thought people would support me, like, because you've got to be joking. And this person, I don't even know who tweeted this now, but, you know, they said, you know, Pearl is useless. All she has is the skin of hers. And so I reacted to that at the time. But as much as I may not be proud, I don't regret the reaction, because I know a lot of other girls have had to deal with what I'm dealing with, and they've spoken to me in the side because they don't have maybe the type of tenacity or maybe the crazy I have to deal with people at that level. But but I'm glad I did it, only for the reason that I feel, again, the child that I was. Like, sometimes I get teary when I talk about this, because every pageant I entered, sometimes I would win and people would say it's my light skin. I would lose, and because no, we have to make a dark skin girl win, even if the dark skin girl actually deserved it, and maybe even I thought so. But there was always a conversation around the way I looked, because no one else looked like me in my community. And I think I got to a point where I felt like I had enough weaponry and enough fight in me to say, no one gets to say this about me anymore. I had enough power to fight back. And I thought it would be just one tweet, maybe one little battle. It became a war. And like it was extremely taxing. I don't want to lie. It was extremely taxing, but I felt like I sleep better at night because I defended the little girl who never got to defend herself, because she knew what was happening. She knew that, like, some people were just, some people made it about my skin, and I felt bad for people who felt they were less because they didn't look like me. I was always sensitive to that. But when it became about everything I'd achieved being just about that, okay, now we're taking it too far. So I'm glad I stood up for myself. Maybe I could have found a more, I don't know, what's the word?
Subtle way.
Eloquent way, sophisticated way, subtle way. But
Yeah.
I'm glad I stood up for myself to this day. So yeah, and I just want to mention something in case you're closing off, because I'm having a great time. It doesn't even feel like an hour, but there's a gentleman on this live, and I don't know if he's still here. His name is Delhi. He calls himself Delhi Banger. The thing I spoke, so he's a sign for me that I can share this with you, by the way. Delhi is the man who convinced me to start making music. And he's a prolific producer. I was producing for, I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but the likes of Sierra, Tyler here in South Africa. He's producing his own music as well. Like, he's really prolific. And he works with other prolific people, and we were going out together all the time while I was hosting at the clubs or whatever, because I love to hang out with people. So great that I get to get paid while I'm at it. And we were hanging out. He was like, you should start making music. You should start making music. And I was like, no, man, come on. Like, because secretly I always wanted to do it. So every time he'd bring it up, I'd be like, oh, dude, I don't want to. So I recorded the song, and I'm trying to decide when to put it out. So I'll keep you updated. So shout out to Delhi. This is
I'm excited for that.
good. It's good.
For that.
I guess everybody says that about their music, but I'm loving it. If everyone else hates it, I still love it, and I guess that's what matters about art. So.
Well, I almost feel like saying, stop it. You can't be good at everything. Look at you. You're good at music. You're good at acting. You're good at, well, keynote speaking, motivational speaking. You're just good at a lot of things. But like I was saying, it's all those other things that maybe people don't get to discover about you because they only know about the acting prowess. I'm sure people are going to be able to discover more wonderful things about you as you do more and more of these interviews or slash podcasts because you truly have such a personality, an endearing personality that I believe a lot of people will appreciate currently, and some people are going to appreciate even more the more that they learn about you. So this has been fantastic. Like I said, I don't want to hold you too long. You know how they say it's always good to keep something short and sweet, but having this conversation, having this
I mean, if you want
conversation
to
with you,
email me anything else, please do, and I will definitely make sure I indulge you. Don't worry about it.
it feels really good. There are very few things where we're able to do it. Like I'm able to do it for an hour. I've had interviews where after 30 minutes, I'm like, yeah, I just have to survive the next 30 minutes. I'm bored now.
Thank you.
But
Thank
I
you.
won't name names. And you wouldn't believe some of the prominent people who can generally be so boring. They won't have interpersonal skills or anything. Um, but yeah, I'm sure you know a few people like that, where their music or whatever they do is really great, but then interpersonal skills, nope. But you're just so good at that, and I've really enjoyed this. I believe the people who've been privy to this live have enjoyed it. I'd like us to get into a section where you just pick up maybe three lucky people with questions that you
Oh,
will
there's still
answer.
that.
Yeah, let's go there.
Someone asked a question that I did mark, but I wanna say the person's name. Oh, this is an interesting comment. Colby_CA says diamonds are formed under pressure. God's not done. Pearls are formed with thousands of grains of sand running through an oyster. That's how they achieve that smooth texture. So, Black Twitter, sometimes when they attack me, I just imagine grains of sand making me beautiful and smooth. Thank you, Ntabi, for your comment. I don't know if you're still here. Okay, guys, ask a new question because I can't find the question out. Oh, Poppy2, PHOPHI, and the number 2. How do you deal with negative people, negative energy, and rejection in your life? I don't always imagine that they're grains of sand, but I try and always say again to build my character. Who am I going to choose to be in this situation? Yesterday I saw someone, funny enough, and I guess I also needed that moment to just kind of tell this person exactly what I thought of them, who went on a social network like YouTube on some show, some irresponsible podcast show, and said to me that said on the show that Zinhle is one of my best friends. She said, I didn't even raise my daughter. And the father was apparently doing it all on his own. And he was living in France for like 4 years. So I don't wonder I don't know, he can Bluetooth parenthood or something. I don't know. But I was told that I saw on this interview saying that I'm a helicopter mom, but what he had meant to say was that I'm an absent mom, but he didn't even understand the concept of a helicopter mother. And I got to see this person, and first he apparently was trying to apologize to me and greeted me and tried to touch me. I said, "Don't you dare touch me! Like, who the hell do you think you are trying to touch me?" And he was like, "No, the only reason I attacked you is because you interfered with my war with Casper and your vest." And I was like, "You would attack children to settle a
Yeah,
score
like
with,
who does that?
like, are you joking me? Like, because I obviously defended Casper, like Casper's my homeboy." And this person then decided that no, like he's gonna attack my children. And I said, so you don't even care? He was like, I'll attack anyone. I'll attack your grandmother. I'll attack whoever I think I need to attack in order to hurt you. I was like, oh, wow. So you're actually crazy. I thought I was going to have a conversation with like a person who's doesn't just have marbles in their brain. So I'm going to have to exit this. And I walked away, and that person ended up kind of trying to not just intimidate me, but antagonize me to a point where I would, like, it was almost like he wanted me to react violently, like physically, the things he kept saying. And I thought, oh man, then he can go back to his podcast and talk about me being a violent person. And I said, oh, I see what the plan is here. And then I left. So sometimes you've got to choose again who you're going to be in a situation that has lots of negative people. So I think that is, that is what pushes me away from
You dealt
negativity.
with that situation with grace. You're trying to be coy about it. You were saying, oh, I don't always deal with situations with grace and all this, but that's a classic example of that grace that I was talking about. That you deal with a lot. Obviously, there are a few things you have to respond to and check and be like, nah, I'm not going to stand for this. Like you said, defending the little girl that you once were when you couldn't defend yourself at the time, so you had to respond to other people with those light skin allegations. But then with this situation, I think just about anyone else who was in that position would have probably punched that guy right there, square in the face. Sort of
I wanted to. I don't want to lie. I wanted
but
to.
you resisted. You
Because I realized
resisted,
how
and I
small
think
and skinny he is, and I thought I could actually take him down. Then I thought, no, 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 no. For the fact that I know
no,
I could take him down, he's already down. It's fine.
but yeah.
Um,
So that's that grace. I think we have one more question that you're gonna be looking for,
yeah,
and
just one
then
more. Because I also got, I'm a mom, and I think one of my kids is not in bed yet. Um, I would love to answer this question, but I don't think I'm equipped to. But I will say one thing about it is how do you suggest we unify the Black community across the world economically? I think one of the things like I love about the Bible is the part where the Bible talks about loving your neighbor more than you love yourself. If Black people could get to a point where they loved each other, if not more, at least as much as they love themselves, there wouldn't be a single hungry Black person. There wouldn't be a single like disenfranchised Black person, because we have the capacity. We definitely have the capacity if you look at the resources we have. But I think with all the corruption, I think it's basically starts with the leadership, but it has to get to a point where we have to take the responsibility of ourselves to do the little that we can, like adopt a child or provide for a child that isn't yours, or assist in some sort of way. But I'm not equipped to answer that question in a proper, intelligible way. However, how do you mend broken relationships? It's really wild how they're not asking me about entertainment stuff. So this is kind of weird and exciting and cool. How do you mend a broken relationships in adulthood? When do you know it's not working anymore? And when do you let go and decide if it's worth fighting for? I think this is a really good question. And I'll say, I've learned that people will always choose themselves. And sometimes choosing yourself is also helping the other person to understand what works and doesn't work in relationships. I think that some people are only meant for certain chapters, and it hurts. Some people are meant for certain chapters in your life and only certain points, and you may cross paths once more or you may not. One of my best friends in high school, like, we don't speak anymore because something unacceptable happened, and maybe for her as well, and I wasn't willing to deal with that mess. So I kept it moving. But you have to choose who you'll be after a relationship has ended as well. So there's no bad mouthing, there's no dishonoring the time we once had together. But once you feel extreme discomfort, it means, I say, people love quoting this actually, and I've said it before. Once you feel extreme discomfort in any situation, it is time you've outgrown that place. You've outgrown that environment. You've outgrown that position, whether it be a job. You've outgrown that moment. You've outgrown that relationship. So it means now you need to let it go. And it's very hard to let go of something or someone you love. But sometimes just because you love that thing or that situation or that person or that relationship or whatever, letting it go is the only way to preserve the memory you have of it. So let it go so that it can also grow in its own way. And if it is meant to be, you will evolve into a path that will find each other again. But you cannot force things that are not working. Sometimes that is a sign. I'm not saying give up on things, because something not working and something being a goal or a dream is two different things. When you've achieved something and you've had a friendship or a relationship with someone and it's no longer working in the way, and you cannot maybe adjust that relationship in some sort of way so that it can continue to bear fruit, let it go. That's all. And there will be more people. There's 8 other billion people on this planet to chat with. So figure it out.
Wow. You keep forcing me to have to say that you're wise. I sound like a broken record at this point. But I'm
Thank
sure
you.
everyone who's getting those responses is seeing how wise you are. And see, you're quick on your feet when it comes to thinking as well. These questions are random, and because they're coming from people in the live, everyone knows that you've not seen these questions before. The questions I asked her, she's not seen them before, and you
No.
always have
I
these
actually prefer it that
intuitive
way because then
responses.
they're honest, you know?
Exactly. And I love just how much you're being able to disseminate wisdom, but then also how you're remaining authentic. Because a lot of people will have a facade for specific things just so that, they maintain their public image, but you don't care about any of that. You are always showing who you are. And like I said, a lot of people will love that. The people who are going to check this out in the Hype magazine will love that. The people who are going to check this out in iHarari, which is another place I'm going to publish this. Social just basically, she's going to be published in a number of newspapers and magazines that.
Wow.
So we're going to be getting it out there, and I just love so many of the things that you've said. That said, I'll answer one question, not one that I've seen here, but one that was said a bit earlier. So people are like, his voice sounds strange and everything. Funny thing is, every single person I've met post, let's say, adulthood has always said that. When my voice just started sounding different, they were like, what? How do you sound like this? So everyone I meet, basically, that's the first talking point, your voice. Um, but I definitely appreciate those who mean it in a positive way. And like Paul, I appreciate those who also mean it in a negative way. Like, people who are saying things negatively, like you were saying, taking those things which are being said negatively and just using them as fuel. But I'm sure a lot of the people who are saying it meant it in a positive way. Thank you very much for saying that. And I've appreciated having this interview. All of you have been amazing with your comments in the chat. So I appreciate each and every one of you for being part of this live. And if you are not already following Paul, please make sure you're following Paul now. And the Hype magazine will be covering this, as I've previously stated. So many other outlets will be covering this. Paul, you're amazing. Thank you to your wonderful team as well for making this interview possible. Renton, shout out to you, and I really appreciate all of this.
He's
I'm sure
here.
he's in the background.
He's here. He's waving. Thank you
But
so much,
thank you
man.
thanks for the interview, Paul. I'm sure we'll do something like this sometime in the near future. You can't stop achieving things, so we'll have other things to talk about.
Maybe we should speak in Jan when the song comes out. You can give me some feedback. So
True.
let's see what happens. But thank you so much for your eloquence, for your beautiful voice. It's a gift that God has given you to make sure people don't miss that you are in the room or you are on the live or in the space. God has given you a beautiful gift that defines and separates you from other people. And I hope that you are doing as many voiceovers as you possibly can to make sure people get to hear this voice even when you are not around anymore one day. It's a beautiful voice and you should be extremely proud of it. And you should speak louder and even deeper if you can. It's so incredibly beautiful. Thank you so much for being so prepared for this interview. It doesn't always happen this way. And I hate sounding like a stuck record, but I've realized maybe it's something I have to make peace with. But interviews like this make it so worth it. And I'm so grateful that I agreed to this. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Cheers. Bye to you, Paul. Bye to everyone else.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody, for joining. We appreciate you.